Today I want to show you an interesting book. It's called Shastra Vidya, the Ancient Indian Martial Art of the Hindu Kshatriyas by Harjit Singh Sagu. And the author himself was nice enough to send this to me for review. He also signed it. That's pretty cool. Thank you very much. And this was interesting because I don't know much of anything about Indian martial arts. Now, I've seen a few demonstrations which look quite interesting, but about the background and everything, I would very much like to learn more about it. And this book definitely helped as an introduction. Now, I was hoping that it might have some specific techniques, kind of in manual format. That's not the case. It's really more information about the background and what some of the writings in the ancient Hindu texts. I don't want to show you too much of the book itself, just so that you get an idea of the format. So these are the drawings that are in here, and along with text. So here's how the fighting is described. It is not intended as a series of pictures to help you learn it, but it's really more about what does the text say, and then here's the illustration to give you an idea of what it might have looked like. And at first it gives you an introduction to the, what does the term mean? Shastra Vidya means weapon knowledge or science of weapons, and also about the religious and cultural background of the Kshatriyas were the warrior caste. And it talks, for example, here it talks about weapon care, among other things. So it talks about how they worship their weapons during a particular prayer. We've got some rules of engagement, battle arrays, and strategy. So some formations and some general guidelines of how to get an advantage in combat. Not in great detail, but just so, just the basics essentially. How the army was structured and what kind of terrain is ideal and who should fight whom. One thing I found interesting is that it talks about the rules of engagement with regards to fair fighting and how warriors should conduct themselves. So, for example, infantry should fight other infantry, elephant warriors should fight other elephants, etc., etc., cavalry against cavalry, so that it's equal. So it's essentially a code of honor that tells the warriors they're only supposed to fight other warriors who are prepared to fight, and it should be as fair as possible and all that, just like you have in many other cultures. But also, like you have in many other cultures, there is a bit of a contradiction where on the one hand you have this honor and fairness, but then you also have trickery and deceit. For example, it says here, always a king should slay his foes by unfair war. The slaughter of foes by deceitful measures is not detrimental to one's righteousness. So on the one hand, as a warrior, you're supposed to fight fair, but if it's about crushing the enemy's army, then do whatever it takes. Also, it says the enemy has to be killed in wars, whether conducted according to the rules of morality or against them. So this you see pretty much everywhere. I mean, in medieval Europe, you had a code of honor that the knights had. The Greeks already wrestled with that. They had certain ideas of how war should be conducted, and they generally condemned the use of poison, for example, but it was still done a lot. Or, attacking non-combatants was taboo, but it still happened. And sometimes it was even encouraged. Or like if you think of samurai, for example, the code of honor and fighting fairly and everything, but then they have this entire art developed of drawing your sword and striking before the opponent can draw theirs. So essentially assassinating them before a fight even begins. So you have that sort of contradiction everywhere, really. It's always interesting to see that. It's, principles are all fine and good, but when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, people are very willing to make exceptions and just, whatever. And including, heroic figures or even deities often cheat and, use treachery and unfair methods in fighting. Assassination is also talked about, of course. There's a bit about training, physical exercise, and the relationship between the teacher and student. Now, I don't know if there is a living tradition in Shastra Vidya, or if it has to be reconstructed based on ancient sources. I just don't know enough about it. In some cases, I have to wonder a little bit how close to reality the descriptions are. Just like with the old Icelandic sagas. And some people have tried to reconstruct Viking combat based on those sources. I find that a little tricky because some of it just sounds a lot like Viking Hollywood, or in this case, I guess, Bollywood? I don't know. Either way, there are some fighting methods described that don't sound like you could get away with it. But of course, in the context of a saga or a perhaps religious text, it makes more sense to have something spectacular, impressive, awe-inspiring. The bow apparently was considered the most crucial weapon. Sword throwing also makes an appearance here. I've talked about that in another video. It seems the weapons are generally associated with certain deities or legendary heroes, like Lord Hanuman, for example, as the mace, and the trident is associated with Lord Shiva. Here's one thing that I find rather strange. This is supposed to be a good position for archery. I don't know about that. I mean, okay, I also cannot get into a lotus position without breaking my ankles and knees, but I cannot imagine shooting a bow from that position. That does not seem like the greatest idea, but I don't know. As I said, I don't know enough about it, so I don't think I'm qualified to judge it. Well, to an extent. I mean, biomechanics apply to everybody. Doesn't matter what cultural background or whatever. There are certain rules of physics and the way the anatomy is structured that render certain techniques superior to others or more efficient. So you can definitely make statements based on that. But of course, this is also just based on the texts. I don't know if there are original depictions along with these texts that the author uses, but they are not in here. If they are, I'm guessing there aren't any. I would definitely consider this to be mainly an introduction. Like, it doesn't go into great depth and detail about every single weapon, but it covers a lot of them, so definitely worth looking into in my opinion. I haven't seen a whole lot of material on the topic, and because I personally know little about it, I can't judge how well researched it is. The reviews on Amazon seem positive. I wish I had the time to look more deeply into it, or maybe even practice it if I could find a teacher. But as it is, I'm more than busy enough with HEMA and all the other stuff that's going on. I enjoyed reading the book, but I probably won't be able to pursue it a whole lot. Either way, hope you liked the video, and thanks for watching. Have a good one.